Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Lead with Emotional Intelligence. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a program manager at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that is building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you may have just seen in the chat, the Nasdaq Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping item, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, and HubSpot. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Now, during these still unique and challenging times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So I'm going to get started real quick by launching a poll of just letting us know, how are you feeling about your business right now? Are you optimistic? Are you feeling a little anxious? Are you in survival mode? Where are you at today? Thanks for sharing. These results are flying in. Thank you so much. Looks like optimism's on the rise. All righty. Well, thank you all for participating. I'm going to end this poll, share these results. Looks like optimism is at the top, which is great to hear, but there's a little bit of survival mode, anxiety, and a tiny bit of fear out there. So hopefully our presentation today will help alleviate some of those negative sentiments. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest. Michael Neuendorff is president and president at Bay Area Executive Coach, and he's a rock star coach for our milestone makers. Michael, so excited to have you.
Thank you, Colin. I'm excited to be here too.
All right, well, over to you. Looking forward to learning more.
All right, thanks, Colin. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now to begin the presentation on how to lead with emotional intelligence. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here because I've been working with the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center for several years now as a milestone coach. It's been a really great opportunity to be a coach in that program. And now I get to participate in another way in bringing the presentation to you today. So we have a lot of people here. We have a lot of good information. It is going to be interactive. There's going to be an exercise that we're all going to do together here in a little bit. So look forward to having you participate when we get to that point. But of course, just chat all along the way and we'll get going. So why this topic? There are a lot of different topics that the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center presents every month for startup founders to be more successful. When I talked with Colin about a couple different topics, this one stood out as one that would be really relevant right now. As you saw in the poll, people are feeling more optimistic, but people are still feeling also in survival mode, feeling some anxiety. And these might not just be the leaders of firms, but people who work within those firms right now too. I think that this topic is as important as it's ever been where we are now. And I'm going to share with you a couple of ideas why, based on some articles that I've seen online. So this one from Forbes.com says that empathy is the most important leadership skill right now. After the presentation, you are going to get the slides because you can see here that I have just a snapshot from the website and then I have a link to the article. So once you get these slides, you'll be able to dig in and read through these resources that I'm sharing with you in this presentation. So don't worry about that. But this article points to the importance of empathy, which is a core trait of emotional intelligence. But how about this one? This is from the World Economic Forum, and they establish a list of skills that are necessary to thrive in the workplace. And they publish an article saying that in the fourth industrial revolution, which they believe we are in now, these are the top 10 skills necessary for success in the workplace. And you can see that number 6 is emotional intelligence. you have, by basis of comparison, the list from 2015 on the right side. And you see that emotional intelligence isn't even on that list. So it has jumped into the top 10 as being one of the most needed skills to succeed in the workplace. And then we have this from Harvard Business School online about the importance of emotional intelligence at work. They've even published a mini series of books on emotional intelligence because they believe that it's so important for leaders to understand how to lead with emotional intelligence. And by the time we're done today, you'll have some really good ideas on what you can do to lead with more emotional intelligence. And this isn't just a US topic, right? This is a global topic. This article is from HR Magazine in the UK, and it points out not just that it's important for leaders, it's important for the people that they lead. Teams, individuals, they want leaders to have emotional intelligence. So the research that this article was based on pointed that out. But we have some other things that are happening in our society that we should be aware of when we consider this topic. Gallup is an organization that measures employee engagement on a regular basis. And they have been doing these surveys for some time. And they came out with this news recently, and it was kind of startling actually, because employee engagement went up in the last few years, but now it's gone down. So let's take a look at the next slide, which has the chart. So you can see here that going back to 2000, employee engagement has been tracked, and there is a green line that shows that employee engagement actually ticked up to 36% engaged, meaning just over 1 in 3 on teams were engaged just last year, and then it went down. And when I say just last year, I mean 2020. In 2021, it actually went down, right? Went down 2 percentage points to 34. Meanwhile, what might be even more alarming is the percentage of disengaged has been going up. So you see the dark blue line is actively disengaged. And so that line has gone up to 16%. Someone who's actively disengaged can be a source of difficulty for others around them. They often are not happy where they are. They're probably looking and probably we would like to find ways to try and bring those people into the engaged ranks. The people who are engaged generally thrive. They feel challenged by their work in a good way. They feel that there's opportunities at work. They have that optimistic attitude that you saw in the survey. They are good to work with. They are open to new opportunities in growth and development. So they love what they do. They love what they do. They like where they work. And we want more people who are engaged, right? We'd like to see that number turn around and continue to go up. But we do have some headwinds ahead of us. So while Colin said we are still living in unique and challenging times, which is true, we have been emerging from a very unique and challenging time that was severely difficult for many people. And leaders need to recognize this and understand what's coming. So there are articles like this from Forbes.com that explain that, well, many people are burned out. There's a lot of burned out people in there in healthcare. In particular, that's one profession where we have high significance of burnout and stress that's been accumulated, but in many other industries as well. So we see this happening, and leaders need to be aware of this. And this too, this might be even more disconcerting. Guess what might be coming out of the pandemic is something akin to post-traumatic stress disorder. Because we've been under so much stress and tension and anxiety and uncertainty for 2 solid years, people are now feeling the after effects of that. And we shouldn't act like it's not there. We should recognize that this is something that we are going to have to grapple with for some time. And I believe that EI can help. I don't believe that EI is the complete answer. And that's something that I do want to emphasize, is that emotional intelligence is not a magic wand that simply works just by turning it on and then everything gets better. What it is, it's a support tool. Right? It's a support tool for leaders. There are many different positive aspects of leadership, such as leaders as coaches, leaders as visionaries with clear visions, with competence. There are many different ways that leaders can create confidence in the workplace and help people to feel better about where they work and about their jobs and their futures. And EI is just one of those tools. And so that's our focus for today's presentation. So just understand this, that it's not so much that you're going to just instantly become a totally different leader, but I believe that you can be a better leader when you use emotional intelligence as part of your leadership tool set. So then you might be wondering, okay, so we've established the relevance of the topic, right? Why it's important and why we may need to lean into this and start to understand how we can bring the EI into our leadership. But what does it actually look like in practical terms? So here's where we're going to jump into an exercise. And so I hope you are ready to stop telling us where you're from and start talking about bosses that you have had in the past. And I'll walk you right through this, okay? So you're going to use the chat when prompted, but you may also want to have something to write with. It could be easier to go through this exercise if you have something to write with, or you can use your computer or your phone. So here we go. What I want you to do is I first want you to think of the best boss you've ever had, which was a total gem from your past. The best boss might even be the boss you have right now. I mean, it could be the best boss you've ever had. So I want you to just really think about that, the best boss you've ever had, because I'm going to ask you to recall your experience working for this person and score this person on some traits. So really get that clear in your mind, okay? So there are going to be a series of statements, and you're going to rate those statements thinking of the best boss from 1 to 5. So here are the statements. Here are the statements on your right, and then the scoring tool on your left. So the first statement is the best boss ever. They demonstrated awareness of their mood and emotions. Mood and emotions. You would then choose from 1 to 5. Did your best boss ever demonstrate awareness of their mood and emotions significantly less than others, average, more than others, or significantly more than others? So pick one of those, 1 through 5, and don't share that number in the chat. Just write it down for now and go through the 6 statements and rate your best boss ever on those 6 statements from 1 to 5. Yeah, thanks, Joan, and also Tammy, kind of getting us warmed up in the chat, thinking about your best boss. Appreciate that. Please go through this exercise with the scoring. So your maximum score would be 30, right? Your maximum score would be 30. So if you're done with the scoring, put in, well, it can't be 4. Price, even the minimum score can't be a 4, right? Because it has to be at least a 1 on all 6. And if this is your best boss, probably going to be a little more. Okay, so you may want to rescore there. Okay, so Michael says 20. Rajan says 24. I'm seeing 30, 20, 27, 30, 28, 29, 30, 25, 27, a lot, right? We're seeing high scores, all generally over 20, and we're actually even seeing some 30s. Delphine did have an 18, so a little bit lower. Okay, so we see some pretty high scores here, which is understandable. But what you should know is these statements are related to EI. These statements are specifically related to EI competencies, which I'm going to share with you a little bit later in today's program. So as you continue to share your scores, thank you very much for sharing your scores in the chat, because it gives other people an idea of how well a best boss does these things, right? Okay, so now I want you to think of 3 words or 3 short phrases that you felt working for your best boss. What are 3 short phrases or words that you felt working for your best boss? That's supported, respected, heard, appreciated, understood, valued, appreciated, loved, valued, capable, empowered, appreciated, respected, valued, understood, supported, compassionate, appreciated, supportive. See, we hear that a lot, right? We hear that supported, appreciated, heard, compassionate, champion, good communication, necessary, right? We felt necessary, we felt equal, supportive, appreciated, very honest and transparent. Thank you. Miyuki says respected, co-passionate, fun, very nice, friendly, supported, trustworthy, valued, empowered, right? I like that. Empowered, honest, balanced, compassionate, flexible, unique. As balance, we see that again, right? Empathy, respected, trusted, right? Flexible. I like that. Respected and trusted. So important, right? Open communication, free. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing these answers in the chat. So now we're going to go to the dark side. Think about the worst boss you ever had. The worst boss you ever had. Maybe you won't have to participate in this one because you just haven't had a worse boss. You've only had really great bosses. If that's the case, congratulations. But depending on how long you've been working, you probably have had a worse boss. And the worst boss, as you think about that person, we're going to go through the same exercise here. You're going to see the same statements, right? Okay, hey, you guys are jumping ahead of me a little bit. Hold on, right? Don't move to the 3 words yet because we still got to do the scoring. Okay, so do the scoring on the worst boss ever. How did the worst boss demonstrate awareness of their mood and emotions? How did the worst boss ever make others feel appreciated? Or were they open and honest about their mistakes? Did they make ethical decisions? Did they manage their emotions effectively in difficult situations? Did they recognize others' hard work and achievements? Okay, Adebowale, you can't have a 3. Can't have a 3. The minimum would be a 6. Okay, the minimum would be a 6, unless you're just giving them a 0 on 3 of them and a 1 on 3 of them. But you have to give them at least a 1. At least a 1. Okay, so the minimum score is a 6. Okay, so I'm seeing 7. So Barbara says, oh, Monique, 6. Steve says 9. Genevieve, 10. Miyuki, 8. 11, 10, 10. Michael, right? Janet, I guess you're giving one of your statements a 0 because you're saying a 5. Veronica says an 8. Sarah says a 14. Hey, that's not too bad, Sarah, right? I mean, it's not great, but at least you're saying that, hey, on balance, that they weren't bad in every one of these statements, and that's realistic. Tammy says a 10. Yolanda 11. Nancy's worst boss 1 on every one of these. Whew, Nancy, I hope you didn't have to work for that boss too long. Dale says 4. Clara says 8. Julia 15. We got a 6, a 9 from Jean. Michelle 7. Okay, so you're seeing quite a difference, right? Remember the best boss ever, we saw scores generally 20 and up. Worst boss ever, generally 15 and down. So a pretty big gap between the best boss and the worst boss. You can see the difference here. And remember that these are all statements related to emotional intelligence. So this is what it's like to work for someone who has emotional intelligence or who doesn't. So now list the words that describe how the worst boss made you feel. How did they make you feel? Yeah, Barbara, I think I remember you had a 6. Disrespected, insecure, belittled, insignificant, little, insecure, anxious, underappreciated, taken for granted, insulted, demeaned, unappreciative, abusive, condescending, targeted, fearful, mean, loser, always under the microscope. Oh yeah, that's tough. Gave me an inferiority complex, overworked, micromanager, abusive, angry, frustrated, I quit. I felt bullied, annoyed, angry, shocked, micromanaged. Just when we read these words, we start to get worked up a little bit, don't we? Just like the guy on the screen, like you start to, like Alexa says, mad. You start to get mad. You feel mad. I mean, I had a period in my work past where I actually literally got sick. I would feel a stomach ache going to work because I just felt it. I felt physically sick. I had to get out of that job. Yeah, jealous and competitive, bullied, gossip, micromanaged, unseen, just numbers started having panic attacks. Oh my gosh, so difficult. Joan, sorry to bring back all those old memories, everybody. I know this is difficult, but it gives you a sense of how people feel when you lead with EI versus don't. And as I said before, you're going to get the presentation, so you'll be able to see those again, right? So we're going to move on now. Thank you so much for participating in that exercise. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Clara says, we should have done it in reverse, LOL. So yeah, we're coming out of it feeling angry. Okay, all right, but we're going to cheer up here in a little bit. So now immerse yourself in all these good words, right? Forget all those bad words that we saw in the chat. But now this is how a great boss makes you feel, right? These are the things that we think, the things that we feel. And this is what happens when you work for the worst boss, right? You start writing the first chapter of your new life. As someone said in the chat, quit. Yeah, that's how they make you feel, right? So we don't want that. As leaders, we don't want our people to start writing the chapters of their new life outside of our companies, because the truth is your people are looking for this. They want to feel good at work. All those good words that we typed in the chat, they want to feel that way when they go to work. And guess what? Your job applicants do too. People who are looking to work at your company, and there are a lot of jobs out there right now. The people who are applying for these jobs want to believe that there's EI in your workplace. They want to believe that there are leaders in the workplace that are using EI as part of their leadership. So then why is it so hard? If we need it and we know it, why is it hard? I think it's hard because of a lack of understanding. That's what I think is really happening, that a lot of leaders have good intentions. They mean well, but, well, they're actually mean. So what could they do differently? Well, start to understand what it is. So let's take a look at a few slides that are shared from my partners at Genos International. Genos International is a global company based in Australia that creates a suite of emotional intelligence assessments and training programs. And I've been partnering with them for several years. So I'm borrowing some slides from one of their core presentations to help you understand the neuroscience of emotions. When we get a stimulus, our emotional brain immediately goes into action and decides, is the stimulus a reward or is it a threat? Are we in danger or not? This happens quickly, very quickly. And then it goes to our thinking brain, right? So our emotional brain is the first receiver of the stimulus. And then after it makes the determination, then the thinking brain starts to think about, okay, what am I going to do here in relation to decisions? According to research from Evian Gordon, who is an expert in how the brain works, everything we do is about trying to minimize danger or maximize rewards. Down to a really core level. That's what our brain is trying to do. Minimize threats and maximize rewards. That's how the brain organizes stimulus that's coming in. So if we take a look at this a little bit more, you can see here that when we feel threatened or we feel that there is some danger in our environment, we start thinking and feeling those words that you see in the bottom left. If we feel something good, then we start to feel those words and feelings that you see in the upper left. So the stimulus comes in, our emotional brain makes a decision, we start feeling a certain way, send that information to the prefrontal cortex, a thinking brain, and we can become disengaged, closed off, evasive, if we feel like it's a threat, or we can be engaged, connected with the other person, and more open to the conversation that we're having, right? So it's up to you as a leader or as a person just working with other people. Am I posing a threat to this person by the words that I'm using, the tone that I'm using, the presence that I'm embodying, or am I not? Because we feel things, we make decisions, and we decide if we're engaged or not, all based on the stimulus that comes in. So the way you show up, it determines the way people feel, and the way they feel determines the extent to which they engage, and that impacts pretty much everything about the outcome of that relationship. So it's super important. So what are some competencies? I shared those statements with you earlier when we did the interactive exercise. These are the 6 core emotional intelligence competencies as determined by GENOS International. Self-awareness, you've probably heard of self-awareness a lot. What does it look like when it's productive? Well, we're present. We're present, very present with you right now, right? Awareness of others, empathetic, right? That's what it feels like when it's productive, meaning that you have a sense of how the other person is feeling, and we have some sense of empathy for them. If we don't, we're seen as insensitive. When we present authenticity, people see us as genuine. When we don't, people see us as untrustworthy. Emotional reasoning is making decisions based on the emotional impact that they might have on others. This one is usually a little bit tricky to understand. When it's productive, it's expansive. It includes other people into the decision-making process about how they might be emotionally affected. When not, it's limited. Self-management is our ability to manage ourselves. It's one thing to be aware, another to actually manage ourselves. When we're able to manage ourselves well, we are resilient. We're able to face difficult and challenging circumstances and rise up and push through. When not, we might get angry, might be temperamental. When we're able to inspire performance in other people, we make them feel empowered. When it's not there, people feel indifferent. Oh, Nancy says, I don't understand the relationship of this diagram. Please explain. So the relationship, Nancy, is that down the middle are the 6 emotional intelligence competencies. To the right are what other people might say they feel or they recognize in their environment when those emotional intelligence competencies are manifested, when they're presented. The left side, the gray boxes, those represent how people might feel or what they might recognize if the emotional intelligence competencies are not present. So that's the difference between the left side and the right side. I hope that helps. So what's your next step here? Well, I do have a few ideas for you. So let's take a look at something maybe a little bit complicated. Okay, it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try and walk you through it. This is called the Conversational Dashboard. And this came out of a program called Conversational Intelligence that I went through many years ago when I first really became interested in this topic. And I studied under Judith Glaser, the woman's name you see at the bottom of the screen. She wrote a book called Conversational Intelligence, which is, to me, a must read. If you're interested in this topic about how to better connect with other people, read the book Conversational Intelligence. Unfortunately, Judith is no longer with us. She passed away some time back. I was very fortunate to have gone through a training program with her over about 14 months to become certified in this field called Conversational Intelligence. And this is one of the core tools within that program, this conversational dashboard. So when you sit down and talk with somebody or a group of people, they all come to the meeting with different feelings. And that's what the arc represents. So over on the left side of the arc, if there are people with low trust, they're resistant, they're skeptical about what they're hearing about, or about what they're going to talk about. Trust is a critical factor here. If there is some trust, then oftentimes people are in a wait and see mode where they feel like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens here. I'm willing to just kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not really sure yet. I'm conditionally trusting. And so they might be engaged in the conversation, but not as much as we would really like. Over on the right side of the arc, you start seeing high trust show up. When there's high trust, people are willing to experiment. They're willing to open up, try things, make mistakes, discover new things together. Over on the further side, it's co-creator, right? Co-creator is, I have no answers, but I want to discover new answers with you, with other people in the meeting. I'm totally open. I trust everybody. This is a psychologically safe environment, and I am totally open to partnering. Now we go to the line along the bottom of the arc, and you see over on the left side, it says protect. When we have low trust, we want to protect ourselves. We want to be in control. We may be defensive, and we're just totally resistant to what we're hearing because it's really our position that's important here. But if we are showing a little more trust, then I would say that we are listening to the other person. We're listening to the other person and we're willing to partner with them. Partner, right? Because we want to go from I to we. So it's no longer about I, it's about we. And that's what emotional intelligence is about. Like, it's not just about me having all the answers and telling you what to do. It's about us discovering, co-creating together through conversation. You see in the statement below, to get to our next level of greatness depends on the quality of our culture, which depends on the quality of our relationships, which depends on the quality of our conversations. If there's a big takeaway here, is that everything happens through conversation. Now, there's a bottom part of this tool, which we're going to take a look at on the next slide. So the bottom part is about upregulating and downregulating. Upregulating are behaviors that are nourishing. Nourishing means they support the other person. They help them to feel poured into and nourished so that I feel enriched, enlivened, energized, right? What are these behaviors? What are these behaviors? Okay, the behaviors are, starting at the top, include. You've heard inclusive, right? You've heard that term many times. We want to include other people in our decision making, in our strategic planning. We want to be as inclusive as possible because that's what makes people feel like, hey, I'm a part of the team. I'm respected, I'm appreciated, I'm trusted and supported. All those words that you posted in the chat earlier, include makes people feel those things, right? We saw appreciate put into the chat many times during that section of our program. Appreciate people, expand, create abundance of opportunities, right? Expand their worlds. So when we expand and we share with people, as you see in the next word, then people feel like this is an organization that I want to be at. I want to work here because people share with me here. I'm on a discovery journey here, right? The leaders want to discover where new opportunities lie, where new information lies, and they get it from everybody because we're open, right? Develop is we want to develop our people and let them make decisions for themselves, not just tell them what to do, right? We don't want to just dictate, because you can see all the negative down regulating behaviors on the left side. And celebrate. So what would you do here? What would you do with this information? Well, this is what I've done with clients in the past. I've told them, look, I want you to look at this list at Friday afternoon and go down the list and think of the times this week that you included somebody, that you appreciated somebody, that you expanded someone's world, that you shared with somebody, that you were open, you were transparent, that you discovered rather than just felt like you needed to know and show people that you know, that you developed others, you developed yourself, and you celebrated. Use it as a checklist to gauge your leadership and whether you are nourishing people or depleting them. Here's something else. On the screen is Dr. David Rock. Dr. David Rock has done a lot of research into how the brain operates. He wrote a great book called Your Brain at Work. And what I'm going to do with you later too, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but I have a resource page that's been created on my website that I'm going to direct you to after today's presentation. So you'll be able to go further into this topic and dig into some of these resources that I'm sharing here, okay? So Your Brain at Work is listed on that resource page. So it's okay if you don't write it down right now. So David Rock found this model for how to have good and supportive and meaningful conversations with other people. And it's called the SCARF model. It's really valuable. It's so important to understand the SCARF model when thinking about having conversations with other people, because I'm seeing some people in the chat saying, well, how do you deal with people who are having performance issues, the people who are disengaged? Well, when you have conversations with people and you follow the SCARF model, it's more likely that they will be engaged in that conversation because you are recognizing their status. You are showing them respect. People want to be respected. They want to feel respected. So respect their status. Provide them with some level of certainty. Right? People want to know where things are going. What does the future hold for me? What does the future hold for our team, our company? People want to make decisions on their own. They want to feel autonomy. Relatedness, we can connect with each other. And fairness, that this is a decision that even if I disagree, I believe it's being made fairly, right? Is this a fair decision? Is this a fair, I feel like this is a fair conversation. There's a link there that you can go to watch a video on YouTube and see Dr. Rock basically talk you through this model and give you a little more information on it. So consider these tools as ways that you can benefit. What does emotional intelligence look like out there in the real world? So we looked at some reasons why this is an important topic. We went through an exercise where we started to understand what does it feel like for us in our past experience under a best boss and a worst boss, right? So now we have had some tools that we can use. What I want to do next is share with you some examples from the real world of what this has been like. How does this manifest? Here's an example. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, years ago was actually at a women's conference. And he said at the women's conference that he thought that women should basically just rely on good karma to get raises and promotions. Digging into that a little bit more, I think he was basically saying that their work should stand for itself, that they should be able to receive raises and promotions based on the merit system, and that they shouldn't need to ask for raises or promotions, right? Rely on good karma. Whoa, he got a lot of blowback from that. He was at a women's conference and he realized, okay, maybe this is my belief system, but I guess it's wrong. So he was being genuine in sharing what he thought, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was right. So upon reflection, he realized that what he thought was wrong, that it doesn't work, that many men are very assertive about asking for promotions, about asking for raises. Many women hold back, but they should be just as positively assertive as men in asking for raises and promotions. They shouldn't just rely on the merit system and have their work speak for themselves, right? Speaks for itself. So Satya, learning from this, he apologized. He apologized in public. He was on a television show that I saw, a daytime talk show, where he said, I learned something, I was wrong, and now I want to be a leader to make a difference. So he wants to lead the industry on diversity. So that's one example. Here's another example. Airbnb, which is one of the fine hosts that sponsor this program for you today, they had the very difficult and painful task of having to let people go during the pandemic. Many companies went through this process. So difficult, right? So challenging. And of course, even much more stressful and challenging for the people that they had to let go, not just the leadership. They tried to do it with dignity. They let them keep their laptops. They let them keep some benefits. They gave them some pay, for a period afterwards. They created a list of bios for the people that they were letting go online so that other firms in Silicon Valley could see these talented people's bios and present them with job opportunities rather than making it a total secret that these people were being let go and let them have to do this on their own on LinkedIn, right? So they did it with dignity as much as they could. They wanted to treat these people right because they had given their blood, sweat, and tears to Airbnb. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, things have changed, right? Of course, now Airbnb is starting to come back and becoming strong again. Not that long ago, we saw the opposite example of this. I'm not going to name the company, but there was a company that laid off a bunch of people over Zoom. And it was regrettable. It was not done with dignity. And there was immediate backlash at the CEO for having laid off a bunch of people, hundreds of people over a Zoom call. And that was an example of the opposite of letting people go with dignity. So even today, right, as much as we know about EI and how important it is, We still see examples of it not happening. But good kudos for Airbnb for doing it right. Here's another example from Bumble, right? This is a dating app. So Whitney Wolf, who's the CEO of Bumble, she sensed that people at the firm were tired. They were tired. They were stressed. They were anxious. They were burned out or on the verge of burning out. And she thought, my people need a break. My people need a break. So she gave them a break. She said, take a week off. That we do not have to just continually work so hard. We need time to rest and recharge. So she gave them a week off. I think that's a great example of empathy, of hearing your people, right? Reading the tea leaves. At Citi, which is a large financial services firm, right? Citigroup, the female CEO, I think her name is Jane Fraser, forgive me if I've misspoken. She gave people a day off. She said, let's have Fridays without video meetings. Like she was sensing that people at Citi needed some relief. So these are good examples. Here's another example. Sid, who runs GitLab, talk about transparent. He believes in being really transparent, which is a part of the emotional intelligence competency of authenticity, right? Authenticity is being open and genuine. And what he does, he writes a monthly email to the board, but it's not just between the leadership and the board. They actually share that information with the rest of the company, right? It says it's also sent to all team members, including the good and the bad from the previous 30 days. Sid doesn't keep secrets from the people about what's good and what's not so good at GitLab. They make it available. So this is pretty interesting, right? These examples that you see of leaders doing it right. And the last one here, the CEO of Amgen had an epiphany where they realized that they needed to go from trying to be the smartest person in the room to actually just focusing on listening and hearing other people. So they said, listening for comprehension helps you get that information, of course. Yeah, you can listen and you comprehend what the other person is saying, but it's more than that. It's also the greatest sign of respect you can give someone. So he went from needing to be the smartest person in the room to respecting others, listening to others, really tuning in and connecting with them. And his leadership has grown as a result. And he's out there talking about it. This is one article where he had a feature on McKinsey's website, but I also found other articles where he was being interviewed. So how will you know if EI is working in your workplace? This is why it's so important, because it can have a tangible effect. You can have improved retention rates. Get more referrals, right? More people are likely to refer people to jobs within your company when it's a place that has EI. And people want to stay at companies that has EI. More discretionary effort. Discretionary effort is when someone will go the extra mile. Not the extra mile to go find another job, like the people who were talking about the worst boss. No, people who would like to work for a great boss, who are working for a great boss, will put out more effort. They don't even need to be asked. They will just go ahead and do it. Greater openness, right? You saw in Sid's example, Sid with GitLab, where he's very open. And that's what you see in a place that has EI. When it's working, people are more willing to open up because they feel they're in a trusted environment. Remember the conversational dashboard? High trust. It's openness, right? And more risk-taking, discovery, co-creating. We're willing to take chances, we take risks, make mistakes because we're in a workplace where we're not penalized and berated and belittled for taking risks. And more risk-taking generally leads to more rewards, right? So this is a good thing. And you should be doing quarterly pulse surveys. If you're doing pulse surveys, you should be able to see scores going up in terms of employee engagement, how they feel. So these are all indicators of how EI is working in your workplace. And of course, you might have people jumping, 300 feet high too. So we're coming to the end of this presentation. We're going to move into the Q&A section. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you have gotten a taste of what leading with EI looks like, feels like, acts like, how it can manifest through conversation. These are all examples that I hope has been helpful to you and just kind of just woken you up a little bit. Because it really can grow the bottom line and top line at your firm. Like it can be truly beneficial and help your company to grow. So the last thing that I want to share with you is if you'd like to learn more, go to the special page on my website, and this link will be shared with you in the after show resources as well. So, and it's in the slides that you're going to get. You're going to get the recording of the webinar as well. So there's no way you're going to miss it. But on my website, there's a hidden page that we created with resources just for people who participate in today's presentation and who watch the recording. And it is /NASDAQ EI. And you'll see things like the link to conversational intelligence, your brain at work, the articles that have been written on my blogs related to EI and leadership, the conversational dashboard that you can download. So many of the things that we've talked about, you'll be able to get on that special page. Yeah, you're welcome, Andrea and Teresa, Dr. Keisha. So now we are going to wrap up the spoken part of the presentation where I'm delivering to you. And let's open it back up, Colin, and now go to questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael. The chat was so lively, so everyone was super engaged. Really enjoyed it. Before we launch into Q&A, I want to launch a quick poll just to let us know what's keeping you up at night. This poll helps us understand what topics and content we should be hosting in the future. Also, in addition to that, you can drop your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We've got some good ones, but just want to make sure if you have any questions for Michael that we get them across the line because we hope to get to them all. All right, so looks like finance is at the top of this key. But I'm going to end this, share those results. Looks like finance is the leader, but sales, marketing, team, all of these things are very relevant to this conversation today, but also moving forward, we'll be hosting a bunch more. So thank you all for that. All right, Michael, if you could stop sharing your screen so we can just hang out.
You got it.
All right. So as mentioned, drop those questions in the Q&A box. Let's see. What do these studies say is the source of the drop in engagement and rise in disengagement? Is it mostly COVID and an increase in remote work, or do they think it's outside of those circumstances?
Well, it's actually probably an accumulation of stress and anxiety from COVID. That initially there was some kind of an increase in willingness to work because we didn't have a commute. We had more time at home. And so productivity rose and engagement rose for a period as companies were quickly mobilizing, making tools and resources available to people. And so it was actually a good thing at first, but then as time wore on and it didn't end, we thought the pandemic was going to end in a fairly short amount of time. I thought it was going to end within 6 months. And when it didn't end, then stress and uncertainty started to build. And when the stress and uncertainty started to build, and we started to realize in companies that were not used to working virtually, how difficult it is to remain engaged and connected, then that's when numbers started to come down. So there's a variety of different factors that cause that. But I think one is the continuing complexity of the pandemic.
Yeah. Great. Well, we've got another question. What can be done when I want to lead with emotional intelligence, but my higher ups are against any openness and trust?
Well, when higher ups are against openness and trust, then it may be because they have not seen the tangible benefits that are associated with it. Because I shared with you some examples of leaders of organizations, large and small, right? Microsoft, under Satya Nadella's leadership, has thrived. I mean, it has resurged and become one of the world's most valuable companies all over again. GitLab has thrived and surged, and they are I believe they're a fully remote organization. Buffer is also a fully remote organization that has thrived, and they believe in being open, transparent, authentic, in manifesting other different tendencies. So Earlier on, I said, I think it's a lack of understanding. I believe that those leaders have a lack of understanding of the tangible benefits, and they're still leading using an old model. So a couple of recommendations would be, one, that they get coaching, that they get taken through some emotional intelligence. There is an EI 360 that leaders can do. Leaders often get 360s, but they don't always get emotional intelligence-based 360s. If they got an EI 360, it might be a little bit of a wake-up call, especially if there were some comments enabled on that 360. And if nothing else works, then you have to really wonder if that's the best place for you, if you believe in EI and they don't.
Yeah, that's great. How do you use emotional intelligence to deal with problematic employees? I inherited an employee who was allowed to do, for years, not to do her job properly, but just started working and supervising her. They don't want to be judgmental.
Right. Okay. Well, it's important that we not be judgmental, right? I shared with you in the upregulating and downregulating table that judge would actually be on the left side. It would be a depleting behavior versus appreciate. So I would first look to see what are the qualities that this person has. They might want to do a strengths finder with them and find out, are they in the right role? Sometimes people who are not doing well are actually in the right role. And that might be in the company, there's a better job for them, or if in worst possible circumstance, the company doesn't have a better job for them and they might be better served being somewhere else. And that's an extreme circumstance. But what's important is to understand, what are their strengths? Are they able to use their strengths towards their work? And are they being appreciated for the qualities that they do bring to the job? They might need to be associated with a mentor. You've talked about the value of mentorship many times, Colin. And maybe they need a really good positive mentor that would help them to develop, like somebody who would actually really pay attention to them for a period. 6 months of mentorship can make a huge difference in somebody's outlook and positivity towards their work. So rather than pull away from that person, I would say actually lean in and really hug that person and pour into that person for a period and see if that would help.
It's great advice. All right, here's one that I know will be good for all of our entrepreneurs out there. How do you suggest we balance the need to execute / produce with the need to be more empathetic with employees?
All right, so the need to produce and the need to be empathetic. And so what I'm reading into that question, if I think about what's behind the question, it is that empathy somehow slows things down. That, for example, if people are in an open and vulnerable environment, well, they say, "Wow, because of stress at home, I missed that deadline," or I'm just feeling like I can't produce to the same level that I was before. I'm feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. Well, there's a few things that we need to think about. One is that production is great as long as we have the right priorities for the organization and we don't have too many priorities. If we have the right number of priorities and the team is fully committed to those priorities, then we should be able to hold each other accountable to meeting those priorities. EI is not an excuse for missing deadlines that we are committed to. So empathy, what empathy looks like when a team is not producing to the level that we would like, is the rest of the team rallying around the person who did fully commit, who is totally accountable, but has completely understandable circumstances that have gotten in the way temporarily, right? So the rest of the team would actually rally around that person. That's how empathy actually can drive results and continue to support productivity, because oftentimes on a team, you have different levels of emotional intensity and different levels of people dealing with circumstances in life. Some people are fully engaged in work, totally able to pour themselves into their job. Other people are having some challenges at home, outside of work. And those are the people that need more empathy and support, but it only can be revealed in a workplace where we're open and honest with each other, where we have transparency. And that's when we can continue to maintain production. We actually will see production reduce when we don't have that kind of openness.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let's see, so many good questions and we're almost at time, but I want to make sure I get to one that will be the cherry on top to the Sunday of this content that we've had today. Let's see. Do you have any, and I think you've answered this on the webpage, but any resources to continue to work on emotional intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go to that website resource page, right? BayAreaExecutiveCoach.com/Nasdaq EI, and you'll get the resources there. So maybe one more question.
Great. And we'll follow up with that link in the follow-up email as well. So never fear, we'll come up with that. How would you use EI for staff that wants more decision-making if final decisions has to be made by upper management?
So in a case like that, where a final decision has to be made by upper management, then go back to openness and emotional reasoning. So it's not that the upper management is giving up the right to make the decision. The buck has to stop with somebody, and that's usually the person at the top or the leadership team. But the leadership team can be open about their decision-making process, share as much as possible as they can. We can't always share everything, but share what you can, explain the rationale behind the decision, allow people to weigh in on the decision, and consider the emotional impact. Emotional reasoning is, what's the wake that we're going to create emotionally by making this decision? By understanding that, oftentimes leaders will make a better decision. So be open, accept input, and then understand that the decision-making needs to rest with the leadership team.
Yeah, lead emotionally intelligently up, as you would. All right, Michael, well, we're almost at time, but if somebody were to tune in to the last minute of this conversation, what's one thing you want everybody in attendance today to come away with?
That emotional intelligence is what's needed today for organizations to go to the next level if they don't have it. If they do have it, then ensure that it's built into your culture. Because when emotional intelligence is built into the culture and the way we operate, it doesn't matter if you're virtual, if you're present, if you're hybrid. Every organization gets better when EI is built into the culture.
What a takeaway. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our community, to be an executive coach for milestone makers, to give back in so many different ways. So we really appreciate it. And hopefully everybody in attendance will use some of these tools to continue to lead with some of that emotional intelligence to run more productive and happy organizations. So Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me here today and for being a really engaged community. It was a blast. Thanks so much, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. And for everyone still on, we really appreciate you joining this webinar, but we've got so many more coming up. So use the link in the chat to check out a few we have this week. We appreciate you all joining us today, and we look forward to welcoming you all online soon. Thanks again, everyone.